I want to say that my books are for anyone who feels like maybe they've lost a little touch with their magic and the wonder they had as a kid, that feeling of believing anything was possible. I want you to have that feeling in your life, and I think my books can help you a little bit with that. My books are for just everybody who's ever loved somebody or wanted something and wanted to make some magic in their lives happen, small or large. It's possible, and my silly little stories are there to delight you and make you believe in that again.
Everybody, welcome back to Living the Next Chapter. Glad to have my guest with me today. We're going to be talking about all things authorship and writing and so much more. And for the readers listening, you're going to fall in love with another great author. I'm excited to have Ciara here on the podcast. Ciara, welcome to Living the Next Chapter. So glad to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here. I love your podcast.
All right. Oh, come on. Okay, wait a minute. Okay, so that's something. I want to do this right now. You've actually listened to my show, which makes me happy. What do you love about the show? Tell people. I'm really curious.
I love the conversation and that you offer people just the chance to tell their own story as well as talk about their books and just get to know people.
It's a labor of love because I love people like you who are creative, share great stories, are building community around what you do. And to know that I, as a podcast host, can be a little piece of that to help you bring people to you. It's a great joy to have you on the show. So thank you for making time for us.
I'm very happy to be here.
Excellent. Let everybody know where you are. Where do you live?
So I am in not so sunny today. It looks like I'm just like a white screen behind me. It's because it's actually very foggy out. I'm in Southern California, right on the coast, near Dana Point, California. So I'm somewhere between Dana Point and San Clemente. Love it here. But mornings can be a little bit on the foggy side. You know, if it was a pretty day, you'd see the water behind me. Well,
there you go. So born and raised there? Or
no, I was actually,
what?
I'm a Jersey girl, born and raised.
Oh,
I was born and raised in Metuchen, New Jersey, which is like known as the Brainy Borough, tiny little town in central Jersey. Not too many claims to fame, but it was a nice place to grow up. It's funny because I didn't really appreciate it enough when I was growing up there. But now I think the Main Street has won one of the best main streets in the United States now. And wow. It made an impression on me. I actually have a funny story about that. One of my first rom-coms that I wrote was set in a small town. And, you know, I guess I'd really internalized the town that I grew up in because I had a reader write to me and say, you know, this really reminds me of the town I just moved to. I'm living in this town and the Main Street your books feel so familiar to me. And she was from Metuchen. I was like, I was not intentional, but I think I internalized it.
So you've been on East Coast, now West Coast. I'm going to make some enemies with this question. What do you like? Which one is your favorite right now?
Well, in full disclosure, I don't think I could live on the East Coast again at this time.
Okay.
It's not the East Coast's fault or the West Coast, but I'm just a weather wimp now. You know, I grew up shoveling snow. And I was the only kid home in a house where my dad had heart disease. So it's like the minute those flakes started to fall, it was always my job. Go shovel the driveway or dad will die. You know? I don't ever want to shovel snow again. I don't do well in very cold weather unless I'm visiting and I can escape. So I don't think I could live on the East Coast again. But there's a lot of things. I miss old buildings and old books. And the history and like a certain seriousness about the East Coast that the West Coast is very whimsical and very like chill and cool. And I've gotten used to it. But it took some time to realize that just levels of seriousness are different on the two different coasts.
Old buildings and old books. I think that is such a great There's a book there somewhere, I think, for you maybe in the future. But I think that's a great perspective. I wouldn't have that would have been my first thought. But now that you say it, I'm like, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, I think I maybe could go live in London. I think that could be a
Oh,
good compromise because it's not too cold.
rainy though, right?
Yeah, it's rainy. Well, I lived in Portland, Oregon for
Oh,
7 years, so I know I can
okay.
survive a little bit
Okay.
of rain. Um, but my next series is going to be set in London. So I've got a little like bee in my bonnet to go live there for a year or so. We'll see if there's an
Mm.
opportunity, if it works out in some way.
I had an author on recently, and he wrote a book around a fictional book around Sherlock Holmes and a daughter that he never had. But he wrote a book about that. But he went and lived there for over a year, walked the streets where Sherlock Holmes walked, retraced his steps, stood where he stood, gave him like some really good perspective to write his book, to feel what London fog feels like, and then be able to put that into his book. I think that's so cool when an author takes the time and expense and effort to put themselves in the place where their story is being written.
Yeah,
I think that's really
it
interesting.
makes a huge difference when you can really live in an atmosphere and capture. And it's not like the big sweeping details that everybody knows about. That's not
Yeah.
what sells it sells the experience of being somewhere. It's like the tiny little quiet details that you have to be there to get that it's
Yeah.
important. I actually set my last book that came out on May 6th. I set a good chunk of it on Catalina Island, which again, if it was clear, you might be able to see over my left shoulder at the moment. But I've spent a fair amount of time there and a certified Catalina Island naturalist. And I really did try to include a lot of those place details because I am a embed yourself in that place sort of person.
Yeah. Go back to your old buildings, old books for a second. I'm hearing creaking floors. I'm feeling the warmth of the wood within an old house and the smell of old books. A little bit of musty and all that. That smell and that visuals coming to me when you're talking about that earlier.
Yeah,
And that's what I
when
love,
you pull
right?
open a drawer in like a
Yeah,
house,
yeah, yeah.
and there's like some little wood crumbs and there's like a certain smell of like,
Yeah.
just like everything that's ever been inside that drawer for the last 40 years. And yeah, there's just so many details that you don't get those in on the West Coast
Yeah.
quite as much, but
No.
you do get different brands of sunscreen and that feeling of sand constantly being in your shoes and
Everywhere. Yes. Yeah,
everywhere.
exactly. Yeah.
I'm living in a beach house for the first time. I mean, I've lived on the West Coast for a while, but I haven't lived right on the coast like we are right now. And so many little details of beach living that I didn't know if I'd love it or hate it. Unfortunately, perhaps I love it because it's not so easy to maintain a life on the coast, directly on the coast. So I'm rooting
Well,
out.
you look very happy, and I'm glad to have you here. Tell a little bit about your author journey then, like for the people listening who are fellow authors that are dreaming of the day when they can actually say, "I have a book in the world." They're coming here for inspiration from someone like you who's done it. Where did all this start for you?
Well, I will say I have always been writing since I was a little girl. Like I think I was born knowing like my purpose in life is I need to write stories because I can't remember a time when I didn't want to be an author. I have little books that I wrote by hand when I was 6 or 7 years old, with my name on them. So I really kind of, my self concept was as an author. And I went to school to be an author. And I was 100% sure that this was my journey in life. But then when I got to college and I went to a really prestigious writing program at Johns Hopkins University, at the time it was like number 2 program in the country for young writers. And I was pretty full of myself. I got into this program, I got a scholarship, write that next great American novel. And I promptly got trounced because my writing was way too commercial, is what I was constantly being told. I had
Really?
grown up, and I should say my dad was in advertising, and I was always writing ads and writing things for him from the time I was very young also. And I was a voracious reader. And what I read was mostly, commercial fiction. I read, Flowers in the Attic, and I read Stephen King, and I read schlocky romances. I read Danielle Steele. I read very kind of like mass market paperback type fiction. I read
Yeah.
good stuff too, but what I really loved was the mass market stuff. So when I got to this very prestigious writing program and I'm studying under authors like John Barth and Joyce Carol Oates and playwrights like Edwin Albee, I constantly was being told that my writing was too commercial and happy endings and too tropey. Trope was a very, very, very dirty word in that program, and that I should just go into advertising. And it was funny because one of my classmates was Ellen Hildebrand, who's probably the most successful author to come out of that program I was in. And she too was getting the same criticism constantly. And I think she may have even transferred. I wasn't that close with her, but I had several classes with her. So I kind of took it hard and I took it to heart. And I did go into advertising afterwards. Went into freelance advertising. I did some stints in PR, a lot of marketing. I became an entrepreneur, and I always felt like it's okay to fail at these other businesses that aren't quite so close to my heart. If I can't be an author, then oh well, I'll do this. I'll make some money at that. Oh, I'm very creative. I could design clothing. Oh, I'm very creative. If I apply myself and learn, I can, start a startup and all kinds. I've done a lot of crazy things. I've done lots of freelance writing, but I stayed away from fiction until I turned 50, which is really at this point, like I look back and it's kind of tragic because that really is my passion. And it's what I always knew I was meant to do. And I felt that I was meant to do. But I think I felt like if I did it and I failed kind of again, like I did in college, I mean, I didn't fail. I just had a really not thick enough skin or maybe not enough sense of self to be like, yeah, I'm commercial, that people like commercial things.
Yeah.
So yeah, I when I turned 50, it was the pandemic had just happened and I just was like, it's now or never, baby. Like you gotta
Yeah.
tell some stories. And I gave myself some time. My son was leaving for college and I said, okay, he's got 4 years to learn whatever he's gonna learn at college. I'm gonna pretend this is my time to go to college.
Yeah.
And I'm going to learn everything I can about being an author. And I could have done a traditional path, which I was familiar with, but it felt too similar to putting the power in other people's hands to decide whether or not I could succeed as an author and a slow route. You write your whole book and then you query it and then you wait to hear back. I didn't have that kind of patience at 50 years old. I was like, I mapped out 7 books in me. I'm going to write.
Wow.
I wrote 5 books in a year, and instead of querying them,
Wait, 5 in 1 year.
yeah,
Wow.
I took like a close to a year to plot the series out, and these were my rom-coms, my first series. I had started it actually with a partner, but she just decided she wasn't serious about it, and she just was like, "You go, you take them and run." So I ended up writing them myself. But yeah, I wrote them in 1 year, and I got them published via an indie route. And what I liked about publishing indie was that I could do whatever I wanted to do, and it's a blessing and a curse because it's a lot of responsibility to produce something that people actually want to read and that isn't terrible. So I hired professional developmental editors to read over my books. I hired editors to line edit and proof my books and to make sure like what I was putting out was comparable to a trad book. Because that was important to me. Quality is definitely important to me. I just didn't want to have to wait, a year, 2 years, 3 years to see my books on shelves and,
Yeah.
for it to find the right home. That may be in my future. I definitely can foresee if I have the right project, but now I'm kind of addicted to indie and I like having all the power.
So from idea to your first book in your hand, what does it feel like when it arrives on your doorstep and you open that box for the first time and it's a reality? Like it's right there in front of you. That's your book.
I mean, it's very miraculous seeing your own book in print. I would say that as miraculous as it is, probably because I've been in like publishing in many different forms, like in advertising and marketing, seeing things like bound and printed are
Yeah.
not that thrilling to me. You know, I've done products
Yeah.
and I so like just to see it like made is not as exciting to me as to see it in a bookstore. But
Mm.
um, the first time you just sort of like walk into a bookstore, and I had this experience just the other day where I was like casually walking through a bookstore section. And I wasn't even thinking about my books or looking through my books. And one of my books was like on display and not just like a spine, but they had turned it and featured it. So it was like
Oh,
on a shelf. And I was like walking by and I was like, double take, you
wow.
know? Like that to me was a huge, huge moment. But it is always a delight, that unboxing moment. That's why so many authors film their unboxing videos when they get
Yeah.
their proofs and they get, you know,
Yeah.
their first copy.
I'd be so tempted to go in and sign my own book and leave a little card in the book and say thanks for buying my book or
Yeah,
something. I'd be, I'd want
a
to,
lot of
right?
bookstores love when you do that. Like they'll invite you to if you tell them you're the
Yeah.
author. They'll say, "Yeah, like you want to sign some copies?"
Or move everyone else's books out of the way and make a little display of your own
Yeah,
book.
I've
Probably get kicked out for that, but yeah.
no, I've been known to like sneak my rom-coms onto the like, you know, summer reads, featured summer reads table at Barnes and Noble.
Yeah. No one needs, we're not taping this part of the podcast. They're never going to know.
You
Yeah, I
never
like that.
know.
No, that's a secret tip, everybody. Okay. I love that. When we chatted, you mentioned to me a little bit about your dad. And I found it fascinating, the kind of the stories you were telling me about him. And he sounded like a very interesting fellow, an interesting background for him as well. Can you tell me a little bit about your dad, a little bit more?
Yeah, my dad was such an interesting guy, and I'm so sad that he's not here to see me writing books because like he really did always encourage me to be an author. He was raised in an Orthodox Jewish, very, very strict family. My grandfather was a rabbi, an Orthodox rabbi, and my dad was the oldest son, and he was supposed to be a rabbi himself. And he was always just kind of a rebel. He ended up going to Yeshiva University and getting himself kicked out because he was the editor of the school newspaper, and he wrote an expose of what he perceived as one of the head rabbis acting a little bit inappropriately at a fundraiser with some Radio City Music Hall Rockettes. This is
There's a picture in your head right there, everyone.
yeah. So this is the story that I have. It's funny because like I just got a notification from Ancestry with the Yeshiva University yearbook and with my dad's picture. And, you know, is this your father? Does this picture go with this person? And I was like, wow, I can like now picture him exactly as he was, you know, at that age. He
Yeah.
looks so young, so young. Anyway, he got himself kicked out and it was a huge scandal, a huge shame. Like my grandmother sat Shiva for him. She excommunicated him, basically pronounced him dead. And he ran out and rebelled and had a ham sandwich, which promptly made him sick, apparently. Took a job in advertising and went into advertising. So he left like, you know, rabbinical Talmudic studies and
Yeah.
total, you know, 180 there, went into advertising. And he was an original madman. He worked his way up from like, he was always saying, like, you got to sweep the floors and work your way up because he literally did that. Like, he literally swept the floors and worked his way up in an ad agency to, at one point, I think he was creative director of BBD&O. He worked for many, many big ad agencies. And in fact, when he was still alive, my mom and him loved the show Mad Men because they would watch it and they would say, "Oh, I know who that plot line's about."
Really?
And I would watch the show too, and I could smell his office on Madison Avenue. Like when I would watch the show, I could smell the like teak oil and the cigarettes, you know, and the rubber cement from the art department. Like I have such tangible memories of visiting those offices when I was a very little girl. So he is most famous, my father, for an ad campaign he came up with for Columbia Records, which was 10 records for a penny. You
Yes.
took the penny and you stuck a penny in the envelope And he did several talks about this, but like the response mechanism, he was in direct marketing, which is very analogous to a lot of social media marketing that happens nowadays. But he talked about like the incomplete gestalt and how like giving people something to do was an effective way to sort of close the deal in advertising. It was a very philosophical madman. But yeah, that my dad taught me a lot of things, and one of the things he taught me was is you're only as good as your next campaign. He's taught me to not be too precious about any of my words. You know, when a book is done, it's done. Nothing's ever going to be perfect. So I don't get too attached to things. He was a really harsh critic too of my writing, like the harshest.
Do you ever feel when you're writing that he's somewhere in the room with you, sitting with you at all? Like you feel his presence when you're in a creative space?
Sometimes I do. I mean, I like full disclosure, I'm very woo. I totally
Yeah.
believe in ghosts.
Yeah.
Maybe not a shocker with my cozy fantasy books, which involve like all kinds of woo things. But yes, I have sensed his presence on a few different occasions. And it's funny because, you know, some people find pennies and they say, oh, like, you know, oh, my dad or my mom, like, must have been here because this penny wasn't here before. And like, she's leaving pennies for me. So I think my dad leaves something that's not a penny. My dad leaves razor blades, which it sounds totally awful and crazy. But my
What?
dad, like, was constantly, he loved doing his own art, you know, for his ads. And he was never without like a pile of, you know, pens and pencils and rubber cement and those moldable erasers and razor blades because he was constantly like cutting paper to like make it into
Interesting.
different shapes. And so there'd be piles of razor blades on his desk, you know. And I swear to you, like at so many different points in my life, I've like walked into a room, like an empty room, and there's just a razor blade sitting there.
One razor blade. Yeah.
One razor blade. My husband at this point too is like, he's like, he's an electrical engineer, not nearly as woo as me, but he's like, oh yeah, Salt was here. Like he's like, honey, I just walked outside and there was a razor blade next to the car. Salt was here.
It's funny. My for me, it's from my dad. It's a dime. It's 10 cents because I will come. I'll drive into a parking lot that's completely empty, and I'm like trying to find the right spot to park my car, and then oh, the meter's way over there. I'm going to move over here, and then I pick this spot, and well, this spot feels good. So I've picked like 5 spots. By the time I finally settle on one spot, open my car door and look down, and there's a dime. Like I could have picked any one of those other spots, but it always seems to be in front of me right when I'm not even thinking about it. And it's like, there it is. And I'm just like, what is that? I'm like, that is so cool.
It is cool.
Right? Because it immediately, I think of him right away.
It's
Right?
cool.
I like to believe it. I like to believe it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the harm, right? When we moved into
Right,
when we
right.
moved into our current house, which is, you know, like I said, it's like a crufty old beach house, but it is exactly the type of house my dad would have loved. And you know, like there's a spot in the backyard where I hung a hammock and it's his old hammock and I can almost see him laying in it looking at the ocean. But when we moved in, we opened up the garage door and the entire garage was empty. And there's like an old countertop and the only thing in the entire garage was one razor blade right in the
Come
center
on.
of the countertop. And I was like, Dad.
Come on.
Yeah.
He's already been here already, getting everything ready. That's kind of comforting too, though, to think about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, that's the sort of
So-
stuff I have a lot of in my cozy fantasy series because I really love all that woo stuff.
Okay, so for the readers, let's talk to them for a little bit here because I want to introduce them to you, and I want them to hear the story behind what you write, so that we can bring all these people to you, and they can recommend you to others as well. So, can you give us is there like a thread that runs through your books, or do you try to approach everything kind of one at a time, and there's no connective tissue? Like, explain, how does this all work for you?
I think the thread that runs through the cozy fantasy series is abundance versus scarcity. I'm very pro abundance. I'm very pro found family, connections, believing in magic, that nature is magical. and that we're all sort of meant to embrace each other and accept each other. It's very hippie at its core.
Yeah.
But that is the thread that goes through that series. You know, the first book is really about finding yourself and being yourself and, you know, living as yourself, and accepting others for who they are. The second book kind of expands on that and connections that last through time, that go through time, that sort of don't because there's time travel in the book. So it's kind of like we're even though great amounts of time have gone by, those some connections remain very strong. And the third book is really going to explore. I mean, it sounds like depressing, but in a non-depressing way, is going to explore death and connections beyond death, and in a similar way that and it's going to have a lot more of that kind of woo, like people are still with us even when they're not with us. You know?
Right.
So it's a little bit metaphysical, even though these are very entertaining, delightful Harry Potter-esque books. There are underlying themes of the things I think about. You know, and again, I'm in midlife, like, you know, that's when you're a lot of your mortality hits, but you're still
Yeah.
young enough to have fun and laugh about things.
Yeah. The bones hurt a little bit more than they used to, but you still feel like you're a lot younger than you are. That's how I feel. And then I look in the mirror and go, "Oh, yeah, that's right. Yeah, I am getting older." What about your ideal reader? Do you have somebody in mind that you kind of write towards, or are you writing just from your own perspective and your audience just kind of find you?
I write for myself, which is,
Okay.
you know, maybe not the best advice, but I think it is good advice because in the end of the day, like if you're not writing a book you want to read, you're probably not writing a great book.
Right.
The best, you know, advice I've gotten from many, many authors is like, don't write in a genre you wouldn't read. You know, don't write the type of book. If you think like, oh, I want to make money and I'm just going to, and that was part of my problem with like rom-coms. I was like, oh, rom-coms, the most popular books. That's a slam dunk. That's easy. You know, I can write that. But, you know, I'm not a huge rom-com consumer. And my rom-coms skewed a little more towards women's fiction because I am a women's fiction consumer. So it kind of placed me out of market. So when I started writing cozy fantasy, I don't know that I'm mainstream for that genre because I'm not necessarily. A lot of people write about orcs and they think Legends and Lattes is a very famous book in the genre, and they emulate that book. I didn't really do that. I wrote a book that was what I wanted to read, which I think came out as a mashup between Harry Potter and practical magic. You know, it's
Okay.
uniquely me, my kind of imagination and world. And my ideal reader is someone who enjoys that like me. So been interesting is that I assumed my readers were going to be people around my age and my gender, but the statistics have not panned out that that's the
Interesting.
case. I have a load of readers who are in their 20s
Huh.
and early 30s. And I don't know if that's sort of like the nostalgia for the Harry Potter series, and that style of storytelling. And I have a lot of readers who have come over from cozy mystery who are older than me. So I would say like, you know, more in in their 70s. And I really love that I have a book that sort of bridges generations and that I get a lot of comments on my books like, oh, I love this so much and I'm buying a copy for my granddaughter. I know she's going to love it
Right.
too. That
Yeah.
makes me so, I can't even tell you how happy that makes me to write something that people that are older than me and younger than me can relate to and enjoy. And
So,
it has like
yeah.
universal enough themes that they like reading it.
Okay, so for someone who is not familiar with cozy fantasy, can you kind of unpack that for us? What does this mean?
So, cozy fantasy differs from your traditional high fantasy, like Lord of the Rings type fantasy, in that it is a lot more approachable and it has
Okay.
lower stakes. It focuses on the comforting small details like the cups of tea and the nookish homes and the just like the comfortable, cute, fun, whimsical details of a fantasy. I would say that
Okay.
Harry Potter is a cozy fantasy. The Chronicles of Narnia are cozy
Yeah.
fantasy. They have elements of the real world. They have things that take place in the real and familiar world, but then you sort of are transported to another world, but it's not such a unapproachable world with, huge weird names for everything and buckets of backstory. Like high
Yeah.
fantasy is a little bit unapproachable for a lot of people because they just are like, I can't even remember the like 16 kinds of caste system. And for me, myself, like I don't read a lot of high fantasy. But
Yeah.
I love books that have some magic and whimsicality in them. And I love all those
Okay.
sensory details. So that's why cozy fantasy was, immediately for me something I wanted to write because I was like, I can write about cheese. I mean, come on.
Right. Well, of course. Who else stands out to you in cozy fantasy that is another author that you admire or someone else that in your space that someone else would also kind of fit into that category as a reader?
Well, I would say that Travis Baldree, who I already mentioned, is the
Yeah.
kind of like godfather of cozy fantasy. He wrote
Okay.
during the pandemic Legends and Lattes and Bookshops and Bone
Yeah.
Dust, which are standouts in the category, in the genre.
Yeah.
And they take place in a coffee shop and a bookshop, and they involve, like a very gentle romance with an orc and who's a retired warrior. And they're just very, I don't know, they're cozy. Like you read them, you want to curl up, with a blankie and a hot cup of
Yeah.
tea and read them and immerse yourself in this world. And it's going to be happy in the end. Nothing is going to happen that's going to traumatize you.
Yeah.
But that doesn't necessarily mean nothing bad is going to happen. I mean, like people read cozy mysteries, there's usually somebody who dies in a cozy mystery. But
Yeah.
you're not going to see murder on the page. You're not going to see death and killing on the page. You're
Yeah.
not going to see, blood and gore. You're not going to, you're just not going to, also no sex on the page. There's no, there can
Yeah.
be a romance, but there's not going to be anything graphic in these.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah.
Travis is kind of my hero, and I'm really thrilled because he's actually one of the narrators in my audiobook, which to me is like walking into the bookstore and seeing my book.
Okay. So how did that happen?
So that happened because my producer, who I had, it's a whole long story, but my producer, I kind of stalked him. I had heard Ryan's voice when I was going through probably 100 different demo reels, hiring someone to do one of my rom-coms, the audio for and I was like, this guy's range, his voice, his talent just stood out, from 100 reels that I listened to. And I stalked, he didn't answer me on ACX. So I was like, I'm going to his webpage. I kind of stalked him. I was like, I want to work with you. And I ended up working with him on that. And we stayed in touch. He was just a delight to work with and a delight as a person. So I ended up staying in touch with him. And there was no question when I was ready to do an audiobook for the Cozy Fantasy series. I actually had a lot of interest from different production companies, but Ryan had gone to work for Sound Booth Theater, and I was like, I just trust him to do the book justice. I know he's going to do great. So he, at that point, had worked with Travis on something in the past, and I said to him, I know you've worked with Travis. Like, is there any chance you could reach out to him and send him the book? Maybe this could happen. He was like, I don't know, but yeah, I guess I could try. And he sent it to Travis, and Travis was like, yeah. He said, yeah, he'd do the book. So I was thrilled. I was really over the moon. Travis, if you ever hear this, thank you for taking on my book. He's going to
Wow.
have a much bigger role actually in the second book. So
And you didn't have to stalk Travis as well, like you had to do with Ryan. So that's good. One less stalking is a good thing.
I'm
Yeah.
not the best stalker, to tell you the truth. But I do like when I see talent, I like to think I have great taste, in things like that. I have some theater background too. My husband and I met in a comedy improv troupe. And
Oh, wow.
and so I have some
Okay.
theater background. So I feel like I am qualified to recognize, like, when somebody has, like, there's a certain quality.
All right. Yeah, I did reach out to Ryan. He's going to be coming on the show in the future, thanks to you, and I appreciate the warm introduction with Ryan. But excited to have him on the show too and get his perspective as well from his side of the mic. But It's amazing when you find talented people who not only can voice your words, but they also connect with your words when they do the voicing of your book, right? I think that's really cool.
And he adds so much to it. I mean,
Yeah.
I'd like to take all the credit, when the audiobook comes out, but I have to say the talented actors who read my words brought so much richness and depth and really fleshed out the characters beyond my words. They really added a lot, and I'm thrilled with the way they've done it. And the guy who wrote the score too, which is a whole other story, it's a young man, he's in grad school, he's blind. He, really connected with the story. He composed a whole original score that's just out of this world. And I'm just so excited for this to come out. I can't wait for everyone to hear it. I just think, maybe they won't love it as much as me, but I think this has been a real high point for my writing career, is to see my book transformed in this way into something just beyond my wildest dreams, like that, other people brought so much to it.
It's one thing to sit down and write a book, but then to also even think about an audiobook. When did the thought of turning this into an audiobook become one of the things you're like, I think I really want this?
I am a huge audiobook listener.
Me too. Yeah.
Huge, because I mean, at the end of the day, I've been writing for like 8, 10 hours. Like, I don't want to hold anything with words on it in front of my face. I like to listen when I'm cleaning the kitchen, when I'm driving, when I'm going out for walks. So I consume a lot of audiobooks, and I have a little bit of that background in theater. So audiobooks have
Yeah.
always been on my mind. Like when I'm writing, I'm picturing the voices in my head, or imagining the voices in my head, hearing them in my
Yeah.
head. I always think about how it's going to sound, and who might read it, and it's just part of my process. I think about audio a lot. I think about I mean, I would love to see my stuff, on a video, in a video form too, but I almost think about the audio more.
Well, you'll have to take a break from your audiobook to listen to this episode of the podcast that you're on, because that's important. So make sure you leave some time for this as well, right?
I'll try. I hate hearing myself.
Oh, I think this is amazing. Okay, so how many books are you do you have right now available to our readers?
I have 7 books out. I've written 5 in a rom-com series that is complete.
Hmm.
2 in this cozy fantasy. The third
Okay,
and probably final book is coming out October 1st.
and then after that,
After that, I have 2 short,
of course.
disparate projects planned. One is straight to audio, uh,
Really?
project that
Okay.
I'm working on. Yeah, it's, I like to challenge myself. It's kind of like a palate cleanser project for me. So I'm going to write an audio only script. I don't know where it's going to go. I don't know if I'll sell it. But maybe I'll just produce it myself. Who knows? It's a fun project for me. Something that's been on my mind for a while. And then I'm going to dive into a new series, which I'm kind of, it's linked to the current series I'm writing. So there's a little bit of overlap, but I'm changing locations. I'm going to London. There's going to be gin, and there's going to be mystery, and there's going to be a little more, like a little edgier of a romance. I'm excited about it. I don't think I'm ever running out of ideas.
Do you think your voice is going to show up in one of your future audiobooks?
My voice, that's funny
Yeah.
you ask, because I did I when I revealed that Travis Baldree was reading my book, I did like a 2 truths and a lie post on my social media, and I said, one, like, a very famous actor is going to be in my audiobook, and 2, I forget what the 2, but one of the lie was that I would be voicing the voice of Minerva, is one of the characters in my book. And so many people thought it was true. I was shocked. I thought it was really obvious. Like, no,
There you go.
I don't
The
think
one thing
so.
I do love when I listen to an author read their own words, because there's just this passion and love for the written word that you have created, and it just naturally comes out. That's one thing I really do love when I listen to that. I love voice actors and I love all of the amazing things they do. There's just something special about the author who wrote the words, even if they're just a part in the book. There's something special that I think I connect with that as a listener.
Well,
Just put it out there.
you'll have to take that up with Ryan.
Okay.
Maybe he'll
Okay.
cast me in a very
We'll
small
have a
world.
conversation.
But
We'll have a conversation.
yeah, I mean, I might read like the dedication or something like that.
Yeah,
But I
that's
wouldn't
good.
be opposed to it. I wouldn't be opposed to acting, but these people are so talented. I really hand it to them. I'm just blown away by
Yeah.
what a great voice actor can bring to a character. It's amazing.
Do you write differently knowing it's going to be an audiobook than you would as a paper book?
I try and really give people something to read, an understanding of the character.
Yeah.
I don't think I write differently because I just
Okay.
write how I write. I will say my husband, who, he might kill me for saying this, but he's kind of a little bit on the spectrum. And
Yeah.
when he reads, needs more description than some people.
Really?
And it's really
Okay.
interesting to have him as a beta reader. I have a couple of beta readers who are on the spectrum, and they will call me if I don't provide enough detail in specifically in conversations. They want
Okay.
facial expressions. They want people to be doing something, to be fiddling with something. They don't necessarily get the emotional content from just the words. They need the physical cues. So when I write, I'm really aware of that. I'm really aware of making sure that the setting, the blocking, what the character's doing with their hands and with their facial features, and all of that conveys the emotionality of the conversation. And once you realize that and you start reading, there's so many authors that I have no problem with. I read the conversation and I'm so like emotionally involved in the context of the conversation and the scene. I can imagine how both characters feel. My husband will put the book down. He'll be like, I just don't get it. Like I need more. So I try and provide more because
That's interesting.
I think that, I mean, when I say on the spectrum, like everybody's on a spectrum. Everybody has like
Yeah.
a different amount of empathy and of, being able to read people. It's a skill. Some people
Yeah.
are like super empaths. I'm a super empath. Like I can tell how people feel like just by walking in the room sometimes.
Yeah.
Um,
You're like, wait a minute. Yeah.
yeah, I'm like,
Yeah.
oh, what just happened? But,
Right.
some people need a little bit more. So when I write, I
Yeah.
write for those people. And I think that's really helpful when people are narrating the book for people who are reading it and
Right.
turning it into a script because they know exactly what emotional notes they're supposed to be hitting and how the characters are feeling.
Yeah. Like you can say the character was nervous when they opened the envelope, or the, she was playing with her hair, thinking about opening this envelope
Yeah.
because she was really feeling all of her feelings in the moment, right? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, I'm getting that she's playing with her hair, right?
Yeah.
That's nice because it makes you kind of, oh, I can see that now. Okay, I get it, right?
Yeah. Or you could just say the character opened the envelope and not give any cues.
And you're like, I have no idea. Is this good news, bad news? I have no idea, right? Yeah, that's a good. That's a good lesson, I think you just gave us there. That's a nice bonus tip too. I like that. That's really good. Well, I'm excited to hear the audiobook as well. And like I said, I'm excited to have Ryan come on and kind of fill in a little bit more from his perspective of working with you and voicing and helping you with the book. I think that's really exciting. A lot of good things coming up for you. I'm really excited for you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me on the show, too.
This is so cool. Again, to have someone who listens to the show makes me so happy. Let's send people to your website where they can connect with you on social media and all that great stuff. I want people to have access to you so they can continue to follow your journey as you continue to write. Where do you want to send everybody?
Well, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok as Ciara Blume author, and that's CiaraBlume author. You can also find my website at ciarablume.com.
Beautiful. Well done. Well done. And one last thing to the reader I'd love from you. Your love letter to the reader as they come and see your book on the shelf, and it'll turn it so they can see the whole cover. They'll see your book on the shelf and they're like, is this the right book for me? Your love letter to a reader, someone listening right now. What do you want to say to them?
I want to say that my books are for anyone who feels like maybe they've lost a little touch with their magic and the wonder they had as a kid, that feeling of believing anything was possible. I want you to have that feeling in your life. And I think my books can help you a little bit with that. My books are for just everybody who's ever loved somebody or wanted something and wanted to make some magic in their lives happen, small or large. It's possible. And my silly little stories are there to delight you and make you believe in that again.
If you're looking for cozy fantasy, go check out Ciara. And if whether it's a penny, a dime, or a razor blade, just keep your eyes open. You might be surprised what life has for you. Thank you so much for being on the podcast, Ciara. I love having you here.
Thank you.
Hey, thank you so much again for pressing play. As you've heard, great guests on the show. And one thing you didn't hear in this conversation is what? What did you not hear? Think about it for a second. That's right. Not a single solitary commercial for a mattress or a supplement or a whatever you call it. No. Why? Because we don't want to break up the conversation with commercials. So the fact that you're still here means that you are a fan of the show, I'm assuming. So if you want to help to keep the podcast going and to make me feel really happy, all I really care about is coffee, okay? I just got to be honest. I love coffee. I'm drinking one right now. It's starting to get cold. I need to warm it up. Helping us with our Buy Me a Coffee link over at livingthenextchapter.com and also in the show notes helps kind of keep the lights on around here. Remember, I'm doing this for free. I'm paying for everything. So I would love to have a little coffee donation, even $5 kind of fills up my cup. And I would love to enjoy a coffee from you. So if you're interested, again, thank you for listening. But you can use our Buy Me a Coffee link and fill up the cup. Thanks for being here.